So grip is important. Some people say grip is the most important thing. And most of your shooting happens with the grip. I think that's most, like, the ability to control recoil is based on all of your body structure and behind the gun, right? The reason why grip is important is because the grip is the connection. Grip is like the shock absorbers or your wheels, right, on the road. If you're not connected to the road well, you can't drive well. And so your grip is like your connection to the gun. The gun is going to do its thing, but if your body isn't connected to the gun right, then you're not going to be able to shoot effectively. And so that's why grip is important. And most people grip wrong. Okay, so another big aspect with grip is people look at how their hands are positioned on the gun, and they think that is 100% of grip, is just positioning your hands correctly, where in reality, most of grip is not where you're positioned on the gun, but how your muscles are activated. And that is like a huge distinction, which in my opinion, I think is lost on most people, and lost on most people that are shooting instructors of some sort. And so most people grip wrong, even people who teach people to shoot, or people who have been shooting for a long time. Most people grip wrong, and not because their hands are in the wrong spot, because their muscles are doing the wrong thing, right? And so an example of that, like, do your muscles, if you're bench pressing versus if you're hitting a golf club, are your muscles firing in the same manner? No, they're firing differently, right? And so they're different. They're firing in a different way for a different task. Similar muscles are being used, right? Some of the same muscles, but they're being used differently. If I tell you to, if we say we don't want this box to move, right? One way to, and there's going to be a force going this way. One way to do that would be to build a foundation and an anchor that is solid on the ground. So as long as, like, this anchor can resist a certain amount of force, and as long as the force that comes this way is less than what that anchor can resist, then it stays there, right? What would be another way to do that?
To build something on the other side that pulls.
You could build something, that would be another way. That's good. So you'd have something that's pulling, or is anchored that keeps it from being pushed, right?
Yep.
So there's a static way to keep this box from moving, but if you know what this force is and it's a consistent rate and or pressure, or whatever fancy engineering thing you would use for that, what's another way, fancy engineer guy, that you could keep that box from moving?
Apply the same amount of force on that side.
Yep. Apply the same amount of force on the other side. And so is that same amount of force a static thing?
No.
No, right? So if I'm pushing this way, Mike could sit there and I could push and it's not going to move. Another thing is Mike could push on the box, right? And now it's not moving. But if Mike keeps pushing and I let go, what happens, right? So versus hold it there and don't let it move, right? So his muscles are now firing differently. And so the box isn't moving, and then now I push. You see what just happened?
Moved a little bit.
It moved a little bit because he had to reacquire how his muscles were working in order to keep it there, right? And again, and you see that, right? So he wasn't actually keeping it there in stasis. He was actually applying pressure to it in the same way. So like Mike is a big, strong guy, right? So go ahead. And a lot of people, have you heard the term isometric tension?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so isometric tension is the idea that I'm going to flex my muscles and keep something. It's basically like building the foundation. Or like if you think about shooting a gun, if I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it in a vise, I'm going to crank that vise down and it's going to hold it there, right? And that's what isometric tension is, right? It's basically you're going to take your body and create isometric tension and pressure around the gun so it doesn't move. Which is what most people try to do in their grip and their stance overall. And so if Mike is a big, strong guy, he takes his arm, and what I want you to, like, don't move the arm. Don't let me, I'm gonna try to bend your elbow.
Okay.
Okay? And don't let me bend your elbow. Okay? So you're a big, strong guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And was I able to bend the elbow?
Yeah.
Okay? So you're gonna do the same thing to me. Okay. So he was able to bend my elbow. So what was the difference between what I did and what you did? Could you tell a difference?
No.
Okay. So rather than being big, strong guy and holding it there, point with your fingers, pick a spot like on the truck,
Okay.
and then project your arm out to that point.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, so which one's stronger?
Second one.
The second one's way stronger, right? And what is the difference there? His muscles are being fired differently, right? Okay, so the isometric tension thing is really a red herring. It's a complete misnomer, is a complete nonsense, and you shouldn't have anything to do with it. But 90% of the people out there, that's how they try to shoot. And it is the thing that gets in the way of their ability to shoot. Okay? So shooting is an athletic activity. If you think about sports, is there any sport you would do where you would try to be a statue?
Sumo wrestling.
But no, right? So if we're wrestling, like if Mike and I are like pushing or wrestling against each other, our muscles are gonna fire in an active way, right? And he's not trying to keep me from moving him. He would be trying. If I was trying to push through him, he would be trying to push through me. Right? He'd be trying to take energy and make it go in a particular direction rather than just keep it there. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And so that is for sure the biggest problem with most people shooting. And so don't do that. So what you should do is do something active, right? And really, if what we're trying to do is poke holes in something that's way out there, right? Anytime you're doing something that's directional, what do you do with your body, right? Even if I'm doing this, right? There's a part of my body that's like, I'm taking energy through a swing and I'm hitting a little ball and it's going that way. And if I think in my mind this way and I go to, right? Is that gonna totally change how that ball goes versus if there's a little oomph that way? For sure. Same thing with a baseball, right? If I think I'm gonna swing this way, but I'm gonna lean back while I swing, or I'm just gonna try to stay here. Is that what you do when you hit a baseball? No. Is that what you do like when you throw a football, right? Like I'm throwing the football, I don't move. The football does. And so I'm gonna stay right here. And am I gonna be able to throw it very far?
No.
No, it's like all of the energy from like the tips of your toes all the way through your body is about motion and energy driving whatever that is over there. So the weird thing with the gun is that all you have to do is pull the trigger and the thing fires, right? But the thing that we are trying to do, we're trying to achieve a thing called fast accuracy, where we want to shoot a reasonable sized target at a reasonable distance as fast as we can. So we want to shoot, if we were going to shoot one shot every 5 seconds, where I could sit here and I could stand however I wanted. I could align my sights, press my trigger, boom, and then, or even, one shot every 5 minutes. I can take however much time I want to align my sights and press off a shot. Then at that point, the only thing that matters is, are your sights aligned at the moment the gun discharges? Nothing else matters. But for us, what we want to do is we want to get to the point where we're shooting multiple shots in a second. That we're shooting easily half-second splits, and then we want to push down to like 3.5, 3.25, and maybe even 0.2 or less second splits. So we're going to be shooting 4 to 6 rounds. Certainly, I think everybody here probably by tomorrow for sure will be able to do 2 rounds a second. Probably everybody here will be able to do 3 rounds a second. But eventually we want to push to 4 and 5 rounds a second or more. Okay, and that is why you have to have the correct structure behind the gun to be able to shoot and achieve fast accuracy. Okay, and it starts with grip. And again, grip is it's the starting point of I have this gun, and it's going to interact with the rest of my body. And if I'm not gripping correctly, then it doesn't matter how I stand, because I've just interfered with the body's ability to drive the gun correctly. Okay. The first thing is most people grip too hard and wrong with their primary hand, right? So this hand is the first hand that goes on the gun. And what most people do is they think about, I have a can of beer and I'm gonna crush it. Because again, what they're trying to do is create a vice and hold it there, right? And so normally what you see a couple things. One, you'll see a bunch of white because, right, my hand relaxed, there's not a lot of white, you see the pink. But then if I squeeze really hard, you can see the muscles, it's like the blood is getting pushed out, right? And so that kind of goes away. And so you see a bunch of white. The other thing you see is this gap right here, okay? Versus this. See the difference there? So this versus this. Even that little subtle, for me it's pretty subtle, but there is a difference between this right here and that, okay? And the difference is I'm squeezing side to side versus front to back, okay? And so what that looks like, just my shooting hand, so go ahead and grip my hand like you're gripping a gun, okay? And then go ahead and relax. So this is how I'm gonna grip a gun. Totally different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one, it's not as firm, because it doesn't need to be. And two, is there any side to side pressure?
No.
So again, okay, now grip my hand. Okay, so what I'm doing is I am front to back, and then I'm rotating my hand in behind the gun like that. Okay, and I'm not rotating it so far that my sights are dipping, but basically what I'm doing is I'm driving through the rear of the gun, right? To keep it on, like if someone would hold a gun there, and I came along with just rearward pressure right here, that would be enough to hold the gun. And the gun wouldn't move, the gun wouldn't recoil. Rest of this is just there for the heck of it. Doesn't really do anything. We're gonna do a drill at some point where we shoot a gun like this. Where the gun is resting on your hand, you're not holding it. You're 100% not holding the gun. And so if you stand up like this, the gun's gonna go all over the place. But if you drive behind the gun with your shooting hand, the gun isn't gonna move hardly at all. Okay, so go ahead and grip my hand like you would grip a gun. So I'm gonna go like a little bit of rotation. So it's good on the pressure and good on the front to back, and then that little bit of rotation. So, and really that rotation is the place where, okay, so that's pretty hard. Watch this. Okay. So if you grip harder than I'm gripping you, you will not have the ability to pull the trigger correctly.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Right, because what is your, yep. So I'm gonna be like this.
Is that?
Okay, yep. And some of you guys, so if you have to combine correct grip with correct structure behind the gun. And so some of you may feel like I'm gonna change my grip and the gun's gonna be going all over the place. And that's fine for now. We just have to change not your grip, but what you're doing behind the gun, what the rest of your body is doing, okay? So I'm here and I'm driving in behind the gun. And the next thing is my support hand's gonna come along. And my support hand is gonna come up here. And I am going to, my finger is gonna be here on this side of the trigger guard. And then my thumb is gonna come over here on the frame on the other side. And then basically what I'm doing is I'm pinching the gun, like that. So I'm putting a bunch of lateral side-to-side pressure on the gun, okay? And then one of the things also is happening is this part of the hand, the heel of the hand, is coming here and hitting right there, okay? So I have contact. So if we look at this, so I have contact like right along in here with my hand. I have contact up here, and I have contact right in there. Okay. And then if I just have one hand on the gun, it's like that. If I put this other hand on the gun, and down here, if you look at the base, at the bottom heel of my hand, you see a little bit of gap. It doesn't really matter if there's gap down there. Right, the things that control the gun are leverage and friction. right? So if you don't have good friction on the gun's going to go all over the place. But also if you don't have good leverage, the gun's going to go all over the place. If I could, if you think about like a hammer, you want to hammer a hammer. I don't have a hammer. But if we say this is a hammer, this is the head of the hammer, and I want it, do I have good dexterity right here?
No.
Good
Oh, yeah.
dexterity.
I have good dexterity, right? What don't I have?
Inertia.
I don't have power, right? And in order to get power, where do I need to go?
Down.
I need it further down. And now I don't have as good a dexterity,
Choke down.
but I have better power, right? And I have power because I have leverage. Okay? And so you're not trying to hit things with your gun, right? And so you don't grab down here because you're not trying to hit it because it's not a hammer. The leverage you're trying to get is over all of the energy here. So if I could, I would shoot like this, because this is where all the energy is in line here, right? That's why like an AR-15 is really easy to shoot, because with the direct impingement system, everything is in line. All the inertia and everything travels, all the energy. There's only gas that travels offline, but all the mechanical stuff happens in line. So it's super easy, super low recoil, super easy to shoot, right? But with this, you have this crazy, right? You have this crazy thing that's going every time all over the place. And basically, somewhere in here is a pivot point. And you're trying to overcome that pivot point because this thing wants to move around all over the place. So again, if I could, I'd grip right here. And I'd have tons of leverage over it. But I can't grip right there because this has to move. And so what I want to do is I want to grip as high up on the gun as possible. And that's why you see people do this, right? I mean, there's one, like, you can tell if someone's a shooter or not by how they pick up a gun, right? So if people could pick up a gun and it's kind of soft, or people pick up a gun and they grip kind of low, like that, and you can tell they haven't shot a handgun very much. And they certainly haven't shot a handgun and learned to shoot a handgun from somebody who knows how to shoot. Because when you pick up a gun, you got to pick up a gun deliberately like you mean it. And then if you pick up, like that right there is like the clue. If I see this, person doesn't know how to shoot. Because I get that. Go ahead and pinch side to side. Right? You get that by literally pressing here, like I'm pinching like this, like a crab, right? And that's not how you grip a gun. Okay? It is that front back like this. Then this hand comes along like this side. And then I have, basically where I'm trying to grip this gun is I want equal amount of pressure here and equal amount of pressure here. Another thing that we don't really have to deal with much anymore was people used to grip a gun thumbs down like this and like this. This was super common. When 10, 15 years ago, half the people in class would be gripping like that. And then one of the things, they'd be like, I'm gripping the gun with two hands. I'm like, are you really? Open your hands up. The gun falls out, right? Because what they're really doing is gripping the gun with one hand, and then they're gripping their other hand with their support hand. And that's also a bunch of nonsense, right? So if I go this, and I do this, and then I open my hands up, gun doesn't fall out, right? And the gun doesn't fall out because I have pressure here and I have pressure here. Another thing to look at is, look at my index finger and my thumb. They're basically at the same height, right? My index finger and my thumb are at the same height. And that is allowing there to be equal amount of pressure. And it's not my index finger, it's this knuckle. Is really what I'm looking at. This knuckle up here, which is high up on the gun, supporting this side, and then my thumb and this, the base of my thumb right there. And this, I can grip as hard as I want with this. You don't have to grip super hard, but you can grip as hard as you want. Because it's not doing anything. It's just holding the gun. Where this hand, if you grip too hard, what's going to happen?
Gonna get all squirrely. Pull all your shots.
So, make a fist, or squeeze, go like that, okay? Like isometric tension as hard as you can. Now move this as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Okay, now relax your hand, and hold, and now move this fast. Like, which is easier?
Second.
Right? And so if you grip too hard, you're not gonna be able to move your trigger finger correctly. So that is overall grip of the gun. okay? So we're high up on the gun, equal amount of pressure on side to side. As I come back to the gun, or away from the gun, away from just the grip here, you know, different people do different things, but essentially what you want is you want to put pressure on the sides of the gun high. So this is my gun, and this is my dude, right? I want basically what you want is like an isosceles triangle. And you know, people would refer to this as an isosceles stance, or a modern isosceles stance, or just a symmetrical stance is how I talk about it. And can you grip the gun technically symmetrically? No, because one hand has to go on there first, right? So because I grip with my shooting hand, in order to be symmetrical, I'd have to grip like this. So my hands are in the same spot. I can't do that because I gotta actually control the gun. And so that's one of the reasons why this hand, right? So we go away from just the grip, but I have to rotate it, and I rotate it so, because otherwise, if my shoulders are, if everything stays square, and these hands come together without any grip rotation, like I can't really grip it correctly, right? And so if I rotate it, now I can fit that in there in the right spot. So another thing to see, and Mike, what I want you to do is draw a line starting on this knuckle right there onto my other hand.
Just where they touch?
Yep. Right, so that's the thing. Where all that lines up is a thing. Okay, because people are going to do this. This is what people want to do. And so obviously that would be incorrect. I want to be farther forward. The further, you almost can't, if you're going to default one way or the other, you're going to have better performance by gripping too far forward than too far to the rear. Okay, so that position of basically what I do is about the tip of my thumb on my shooting hand is about resting on this rear knuckle here of the other thumb. Right? So that's the thing, is wrist position. So wrist position has to be correct. And then I get this going on. Okay? And then behind the gun, so I want symmetry behind the gun. What I don't want to do is this. This used to be a thing people would do, but this basically, again, puts you in a weird, like, is there anything that you do where you lock your elbows out?
No.
Like, if you just stand there and put your arms straight. Okay? No, I mean straight. Like, that's super weird, right?
I feel like Sean walks like this.
Right? That's super weird.
Normal for some
Okay?
people.
And there isn't anything, like, you've just put your muscles and your joints at max extension, which don't allow you then to use your muscles for things. So it's a super weird spot. Not really anybody shoots that way anymore. I mean, there's still some people that shoot that way. So before GWAT, law enforcement and military were 20 plus years behind. Okay, post GWAT, law enforcement and military are maybe, like, your average dude is maybe only 5 or 10 years behind. Right? And then if you get to higher level people, they get closer and closer to being not behind. Right? But they're still usually behind a little bit, right? So, like, the best shooters in the world are competitive shooters, like people who shoot some sort of sport shooting USPSA type thing, right? Those are the people who shoot fast and accurate, the best in the world. And they're people at tier 1 units in the 80s and 90s were like, we should learn to shoot from these guys. And so they did. And so people at tier 1 units mostly shoot the same way like world-class competitive shooters shoot. And they have been doing that for decades. Decades and decades and decades, right? Longer than some people here have been alive, right? And it's not a secret. And then people who are, like, not tier 1 people People who are like average street cops and average military guys are like, well, that's not what I learned when I went through wherever in my, when we were snapping in on the barrel, that's not what we did, right? Or when, at the police academy, my instructor who's super cool, that's not what we did. And so obviously that's wrong. And, competition will get you killed in the streets kind of thing, right? Where, no, I mean, competition will prove out hard skills. And so if you have really good hard skills of like shooting and running a gun, that is a thing then in a real life situation. You don't have to think about shooting and running your gun. You can think about, okay, there's a bad guy. Does he need to be shot or not? Where do I need to move to position myself to shoot him? How do I have to think about everybody else here? Right? There's other things that you have to problem solve, and you don't have to think about shooting. So shooting is not like this is a place that people. So some people want to teach crazy liberal relativism when it comes to shooting, and they're like, whatever works best for you. Everybody is their own individual, and you need to find the thing that is comfortable for you and figure out how to shoot. Which is basically the same thing as saying we're all little special princess fairies. We all should get the trophy, and you should all just do what you want because you're a crazy wacko liberal. And there is a way to shoot, right? Just like there's a way to throw a football. Does every NFL quarterback throw a football exactly the same way? No. But do they all probably throw a football 80 or 90% the same way?
Yes.
Yes. Does every professional baseball player hit a baseball the same way? No. Is it 80 or 90% the same? Yes. With a few rare exceptions. And then when the TV announcer is talking about the guy's golf swing or the guy's baseball swing or how he throws a football, they focus in on the minutia. They focus in on the 5% difference that says that Russell Wilson is different than Kyler Murray in this way and how they throw a football, which they are, but they're also mostly the same. And if you went and they told you how to throw football, they'd probably tell you 90% the same thing. And so for the guy who can't even achieve 40% of the performance that they achieve, you should just throw football a conventional way. And then at the point that you can achieve 80 or 90% of the performance that Russell Wilson can achieve, then you can start focusing on the minutia of things, right? And that is the same thing with shooting. So there is a way to shoot. Competitive shooters all shoot mostly the same way, with some differences in the last 5 and 10%. And then people want to focus on that 5 and 10%. So people who can barely shoot 2 seconds or 2 rounds a second want to get into the minutia of the distinction between shooting, 5 and 6 rounds a second, where it's like, that's not where you're at right now, and so that's not helpful. So focus on the thing that gets you to 4 rounds a second, and then we can start getting into the minutia of things. And yeah, you might change some stuff. And if you line up the best shooters in the world, do they all look exactly the same? No. But are they doing 90% the same thing? Yes, they are. Right? So you're not your own special little princess that gets to do your own thing. I mean, you can, but you're just going to get in the way of yourself. Okay? So there's a way to shoot. There's a way to pull the trigger. There's a way to stand behind the gun. And all the best shooters do the same stuff. And most of law enforcement and the military is still a little bit behind the curve on a lot of that stuff. Right? And so a strict isosceles position of elbows locked, like almost nobody shoots that way anymore. There's generally, you're basically, if your arms are relaxed, okay, bring your arms up in front of you. That's your shooting position. There's no tension and there's no stress in it. You're going to energize your muscles in a particular way, but you're here and you're basically what you're going to do is I'm going to see something over there, I want to kill it. And like the amount of intent you would have towards that is the amount of intent you would have behind the gun. It's like, if there's something over there that needs to die, you're not going to be like this, right? Or you shouldn't be. Which that is another common thing when people shoot. They're like, well, if I'm going to stick this out in front of me, to hold it there for a long time, I need to lean back to create like this equal point, right? Or no. This is an active thing. So you get in your, I'm going to go kill that person position, and then just bring the gun up in front of you without a whole bunch of stress and pressure. Okay. And then here, and you could, basically what I want to do is I want to put, with a little bit of intention behind the gun driving forward, is I'm putting a little pressure on either side of the gun. Okay, and people will do that. People will say they flex their elbows up a little bit. People will just say they flex their wrists in a little bit, or people will talk about rotating their shoulders. And really, all of those things are connected, right? And so you're probably doing all of those things, but probably none of them, kind of at the same time.
Got it. Deep science there.
I said that makes sense.
Now science.
I waited 2 more seconds.
All right, so I'm just here and I'm driving up behind the gun. Okay. The other thing when it comes to shooting, so how do you stand? When you stand, you want to stand, well, you should be able to eventually not worry about how you stand and just shoot. So like that's for sure is a thing. And so there are some people who will come along and talk about, well, we don't do stances because there's no optimal stance in the real world. I'm like, okay, well, we're not in the real world right now. We're on the range trying to learn how to shoot. And if you learn how to shoot correctly, like if you learn the right foundation is the thing that allows you then to be able to basically use the same principles and shoot and move, shoot in and around things, and shoot in a dynamic environment because you've learned the foundational principles about structure behind the gun. And so if you're just like, oh, it doesn't matter, then you're not going to learn them, and you're going to suck while we're standing on the range, and you're also going to suck when you're moving around. So generally speaking, you want to stand with feet a little more than shoulder width apart, and your support side foot, right, is in front of your shooting foot. And my toe is about the mid-step of that foot, is about where I'm going to be. And then my energy, my weight, so if you look here, my hips, right, I don't have a bend in my hips. My hips are actually, they're underneath me a little bit, right? And you get power from there. Okay, you think about like, swinging a baseball, where's the power come from?
Hips.
Comes from your hips, right? Think about swinging a sword, right? Power comes from your hips. So I think, so like my grandmother was a little short Japanese lady, and you think about little Japanese people walk around like this, right? So she was like that. Okay, and that is a little bit, so your hips need to be up underneath you a little bit, not a bend. If you put a bend there, you create a hinge point, which doesn't allow you to use, basically you're saying, only use from my waist up. If I come underneath like that a little bit, then use my whole body to control recoil, okay? And then my chest here, my chest is kind of, I'm upright, but I'm a little hollowed out, and I'm driving forward. I'm not super down, crouched like this. I'm upright, but basically everything is like, boom, project out to the thing. Okay, and then my head is up, my head is flat to the target. So that is super important. What I don't want to do is I don't want to be shooting out of the top of my eyes. Or what I don't want to be doing is anybody cross-eye dominant? Anybody know?
I mean, technically.
Yeah.
So go ahead and
Yeah.
do this thing, pick a spot, right? Do this, come back to your eyeball.
Yeah.
You're cross-eye dominant
Yeah.
or not?
So offside.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you come back to your left.
Mhm.
Do you come back to your left?
I used to.
You used
11
to,
years
but you
ago.
untrained that.
I fixed
Good.
it.
So some
Fix
people
that,
are like,
John.
you
Yeah,
can't.
I'll get right on that.
So some people are like, you're born that way. You can never change, right? Okay. So everybody, close your left eye. Which eye's dominant?
Right one.
The one.
Your right one. Okay. Now, magic right now. Okay. Close your right eye. Which eye's dominant?
Left one. Left.
Your left. Okay. So it is really kind of that easy. When it comes to a pistol, obviously with a rifle, you need to shoot the rifle with whichever, and it's easier. And then you switch eyes. If you're a right-handed shooter with a rifle, you're going to shoot out of your right eye. And you do that by occluding your left eye and by looking through the thing, right? I mean, it is that simple, and that is the example of you can do it. When it comes to pistol, I don't care whether you do it or not. If you want to, that's fine, and you can train yourself to do it. It sounds like Mike did over time, and that's fine. But you don't have to. But what I don't want you to do is this is most people shooting out of their left eye. right? Okay, and so this is me shooting out of my right eye. This is me shooting out of my left eye. Okay, right eye, left eye. So what moved?
The gun.
The gun moved, and how much did it move? Did it move like a ton?
No.
It just moved a little bit, right? And so that is what you move. You don't move your head. You move the gun slightly, okay? And you'll develop where that is. It's going to be awkward right now for you, but you don't move your head. And the reason why is you are a predator. And so does the lion get up and look around and look out the corner of its eye?
No.
For its prey, right? So who has eyeballs on the side of their head? Do some animals have eyeballs on the side of their head?
Yeah.
Birds.
Runners.
Birds,
Deer.
deer, and what are all those animals?
Runners.
Meals.
Yeah, those animals are all prey, right? So predators have binocular vision with their eyeballs on the front of their head. And so don't turn yourself into food by looking to the side. Okay, so our face should be flat to the target. We should be looking out the middle of our eyes because that is where our vision is optimized. We should see everything we need to see, including the target and our sights and everything else. Okay, and if you need to move the gun slightly to change which eye you're shooting out of. So we have some stance stuff, we have some vision positioning stuff, and we got some grip, right? And so again, this stance behind the gun is what controls recoil. It's not your grip. The grip is just the connecting point between the gun and that stance. Okay? And think about it like if you want to do anything, like if I had a spear, I'm going to stab somebody with a spear. What is doing this? Like, what's the most important part? How I'm holding onto the spear or how I'm using my body?
Your body.
My body is going to determine how accurate and how much energy is behind the stabbing of that spear. And if I'm shooting a gun, it's just a really long spear, and I'm driving that spear into the bad guy, pressing the trigger. Okay, and it's like the grip determines how my body affects the gun. Okay, and like I said, we'll do a drill here later on today where we basically don't grip the gun at all. And we shoot accurately and fine. Obviously it's not optimized, but we basically can shoot without gripping the gun.